Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here for a deeper look at episode 16 of Power Rangers Dino Fury, Ancient History. But first, a rapid run-through. Let's kick off the counter. It's morphin' time. Okay, so we open on Dino Henge, where the Gold Ranger teleports in as the other Rangers are training in the base, before teleporting down to join them and say hi.
Hi, Ion, nice clothes.
He's one of the original Knights of Ravcon,
Like Zato,
and catches them up on how their final attack 65 million years ago forced an emergency eject that landed him in the bottom of the bay, where he was eventually woken up by
the Green Morphin Master?
after being found by the Nexus Prism.
Because of Lord Zed's return.
After this continuity cavalcade, they confirm that his Zord's still absent, and he offers to join their team on one condition.
He wants to be in charge.
The others protest, but Ion spills some truth about what happened 65 million years ago.
The Ravconians created the sports beasts?
Turns out there was some other great evil coming,
Foreshadowing.
so they created them as weapons, which Zato supported, but Ion opposed.
And we saw how that went.
But the backstory dump's interrupted by an attack on the port, so they teleport out to fight.
Mucus with a spear gun?
Zato tries to take her on himself, but deflects a spear into a barrel of fish oil, leading to
Slippy slidey hijinks.
Zato gets pinned, and Amelia and Ollie take a spill, but Ion breaks up a crate to create a slip and slide surfboard to take down Mucus and the henchmen with Izzy and Javi. Before Slither shows up with a boat they were stealing, they all teleport away to Area 62 to finish assembling Void Knight's newest robotic general.
Wreckmate.
To go find the gold dinosaur, while at the Ranger's base, Ion calls out Zato for a screw-up, so he has a heart-to-heart with Solon over whether he should step aside, as the others realize the Sporks found the Zord data from hacking Ollie's mom's laptop, and they all go to Buzz Blast with Ion to track the Zord until Solon calls them over the newest Sporks attack.
Because Mucus needs beachwear and ice cream.
All 6 Rangers meet up to morph and fight Wreckmate and
The Aqua Henchman.
with Ion taking lead and summoning his battle armor along with Zato to fight Wreckmate, who grows giant and fights the Dino Fury Megazord, forcing them into the bay where he's got the aquatic advantage, making Ion freeze up and ask Zato for advice.
Abandon Zords!
On shore, Ion apologizes for judging Zato's past decisions so harshly, and they make up, awakening
The Mosa Razor Zord.
which converts to battle mode, so Zato and Ion can take out Wreckmate with a harpoon strike, after which they return to base, apologize for past mistakes and harsh judgments, and wrap things up with some playful sparring.
Roll credits.
And that's the end of the episode. Now, let's take a deeper look. This episode definitely felt like one that had been building up for a long time, with a ton of different little plot points and reveals finally starting to come to a head. And with Ion now receiving a full and proper introduction as our new 6th Ranger, it does feel like we've entered a new phase of our story. This is further highlighted by his integration into the opening credits, which I will admit is kind of frustrating, especially since this is the first time we actually see his name and face. And although Orion's name was first revealed through opening credits, and Gem and Gemma's identities as the Gold and Silver Rangers were first revealed through opening credits, this is the first time that both a 6th Ranger's name and face were revealed through opening credits since Daggeron as the Solaris Knight in Power Rangers Mystic Force. Ironically, that was our first Golden Knight, which I guess means that Ivan is the odd knight out on this one. But that being said, the same was true of both Izzy and Javi, and technically our first 3 Rangers as well, so I guess this whole spoiler credits trend is just going to be a running thing this season. So while it is a bit disappointing that the mystery of the Gold Ranger's identity isn't as much of a mystery as the previous episode would suggest, it is appreciated that they don't try to treat it as a mystery in this episode, with Ion's identity being revealed almost immediately, right at the beginning of the story. Although his choice of clothing attire definitely raises other questions. Seriously, where did this guy get his clothes from? 65 million years in stasis, and the first thing he does before even revealing his identity is run down to the department store? It may seem like a pretty minor point to get hung up on, but it is a pretty jarring detail when one considers not only that Zato originally wore his Ravconian attire throughout the entirety of the first 2 episodes, but also that Ion clearly does have the same outfit on under his armor in the flashback sequences. So in this regard, it does look like this wardrobe choice is a very deliberate one on the part of the show, presumably to highlight how hard Ion is working to integrate himself into the current team and present himself as an appropriate leader. Even if he almost certainly had to steal from a clothing store to do it. Which, you know, you would kind of assume the other Rangers would almost immediately have picked up on and commented on. It's very weird. It all further highlights how awkward the transition actually is from the previous episode, as it feels like the only reason they didn't reveal his face last episode was just to tease the reveal in this episode and limit his number of paid appearances, rather than for any clear story reasons, while at the same time giving him modern clothing just to try to make him blend in, even if it should, ironically, make him stand out even more. This approach presents the other Rangers as oddly incurious and uncritical, as they apparently hadn't asked Zato or Solon about the new Gold Ranger during whatever span of time existed between the previous episode and this one, nor have questions for their new teammate for why he teleported away from them at the end of their last encounter.
Was this gap of time a day? A week? An hour during which everyone coincidentally decided to go change their clothes without talking about anything else?
At the very least, we know that there's been enough time since episode 14 for Izzy to claim that Lord Zed has been gone for ages, which suggests that the Halloween episode maybe was actually aired out of sequence with the rest of the season. But putting aside these apparent continuity issues with the two previous episodes, this brings us to the continuity references that the writers actually do seem to want to focus on. The backstory of Zato and Ion, and the reinforced plot significance of both Lord Zed and the Morphin Masters. Ion's exposition raises questions about what Zed's future role in the series might be, what original evil initially led to the preemptive creation of the Sporix, and why specifically the Green Morphin Master was the one who chose to wake him in the present day, after having previously been shown to be working alongside the Red Morphin Master to create the Ninja Nexus Prism and commanding it to track him down.
One would expect the Gold Morphin Master, but the choice to go green seriously suggests there are some interestingly individualized character choices going on with these seemingly monolithic ancient beings.
Maybe a split over whether it's finally time to get involved with Ranger affairs again after 65 million years? It's hard to say. This could also potentially parallel with what is obviously the core conflict of this episode, that being the schism between Zato and Ion, who clearly had a harsh falling out over the original creation of the Sporix, a genuinely shocking backstory reveal that introduces some fascinating moral ambiguity and carries with it very clear implications for even greater threats down the line. Unfortunately, it does also raise again questions about our timeline of events, as this falling out definitively occurred before Zato and Ion became Rangers, but no mention is made over how they were able to work alongside each other throughout all their battles with the Sporix.
And honestly, it makes Ion seem like kind of an opportunist.
Like, the moment that he realizes that the old team is gone, he immediately goes and gets a makeover, spills all of his dirty laundry with Zato, and tries to manipulate the newbie Rangers to make a play for power, which is all something that Zato clearly anticipates, but strangely does nothing to counteract. All of this, of course, is smoothed over by the end of the episode, as continuing interpersonal conflicts between the Rangers are apparently no longer considered appropriate since the days of RPM, which just so happens to share an episode title here. But it does generate an odd discomfort that permeates throughout the run of the episode. And while it is appropriate for an interpersonal conflict to generate discomfort, much of the discomfort here is linked to the disconnect between the character motivations and the sequence of events within the story, as what's dictated by the narrative as a long-standing grudge between two people who were forced to work together is simultaneously treated as a relatively recent disagreement between two people that ostensibly still see each other as friends.
Basically, it feels unlikely that the two would have been able to work together throughout the entirety of the ancient Sporix battles without either resolving their issues or else having them fester past the points of easy resolution.
Because after all, Ion's questioning of Zato's leadership is rooted in his disagreement with how the Sporix War began, not how it ended. This again feels like the show kind of undermining itself, as the loss of their other four teammates should act as the perfect driver for Ion's attempt to replace Zato as leader, as well as a perfect reason for Zato to actually doubt himself enough to actually consider stepping aside. But just as the show appears uncomfortable with allowing for extended conflict between Rangers, it appears equally uncomfortable over dealing with the very serious trauma that the loss of an entire team would have on the surviving members, choosing instead to focus on something that makes for an interesting backstory reveal, but feels substantially less appropriate for the situation.
I guess they didn't want to go too dark in an episode that also featured a slip-and-slide battle against a spear-launching mushroom.
And I will admit, as much as it broke my physics brain to watch, that was a genuinely engaging and creative fight sequence, as was the physical comedy of the later fight against the Aqua henchmen wearing pool floaties. And this encapsulates many of my frustrations with this episode, as the fish oil sequence is a perfect example of a fun and interesting idea that nevertheless requires the characters to behave in counterintuitive ways, like Ollie and Amelia choosing to run out onto the slick fish oil immediately after Zato had just done the same, instead of using their ranger powers to just, jump over it.
There are some apropos character dynamics with the two elder newbies following so closely behind Zato, while the two newer Garcia siblings are more willing to embrace Ion, but it still involves some pretty deliberate Wile E. Coyote moves in the process. After all, with Jane and Jay Borg absent again, we had to get our physical comedy in somewhere. The episode as a whole, though, does leave me feeling rather torn. On the one hand, we do get some fantastic bombshell reveals, making our Red Ranger partially responsible for our primary villains, bringing the Morphin Masters back to start properly engaging in the story, and surprisingly tying things together with the unresolved threat of Lord Zed from 2 episodes prior, giving us the impression of a ton of different plot threads finally starting to come to a head. But at the same time, the series seems unwilling to fully engage with some of the implications of the conflicts that is now introduced, making our various heroes seem either opportunistic, cowardly, or oddly naive, while still presenting them as a strong team at the episode's conclusion. Much like Ion slip and slide surfboarding, there are definitely a lot of slick moves here on the part of the writers and the production team. It's just a shame that they weren't better tethered by the gravity of their situation. So make sure to join me next time for a deeper look at episode 17 of Power Rangers Dino Fury, Our Hero. And if you would like to share this week's rapid run-through, you can find it as a standalone clip over at Morphin Legacy's YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe to us both, ring the bell for future notifications, and until next time, farewell Ranger fans, and let the power protect you.